On March the 30th, 2019, on the second round of the Slovak presidential elections, as had already been expected, given her strong plurality, won on the first round that was held on March the 16th, 2019, a liberal human rights activist and anti-corruption activist, Ms. Zuzana Caputova, was elected with over 58% of the popular vote. She will take office in May and will therefore become the first Slovak female president. She is also relatively young, having been born in June 1973, especially for an elected president. She has notably liberal attitudes and became prominent after the assassination in January 9, 2018 of a Slovak male journalist who had planned to uncover corruption in that country's legal or political system. And this election result is also a defeat for Slovakia's largest political party, whose controversial leader, Mr. Robert Fico, has served for several years as the country's prime minister, but may not be the current incumbent. In Slovakia, as in most other European republics, or many other European republics, especially those which are fully located in Europe, so not counting Russia, and then not counting those which are on the borderline. I'm talking of Armenia, Georgia, and Azerbaijan, and then those that are geographically in Asia but have ties to Europe, Cyprus, and then those whose, Kazakhstan is partly in Europe. A tiny bit of it is in Eastern Europe, but most of it is in Central Asia, not to mention then Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and so forth. So many of the European republics are parliamentary, which means that the president has either fully or mostly ceremonial and symbolic powers, especially in domestic policy. For example, appointing the prime minister or the head of government and the country's executive leader, and then the other cabinet ministers, and opening and closing the parliament, then dissolving the parliament. In a parliamentary democracy depends on the prime minister's, or more generally, the cabinet's initiative. The president cannot initiate that process. And if the president has a veto power in a normal parliamentary republic, it's a rather weak one, or a very weak one, as in Finland, my distant native land in Northern Europe. However, in Slovakia, despite that country being classified basically as a parliamentary republic, the president still nominates the prime minister, although the prime minister, of course, has to get a working majority in the Slovak parliament in order to be able to govern the country. The president has a strong veto power because a 2/3 majority is needed in the single chamber Slovak parliament to override the veto. Besides, the Slovak president appoints the judges of the country's highest courts. And let's see what President-elect Caputova will do in office. So let's look more closely at her Wikipedia article. She was born into a working-class family in Bratislava, Slovakia's capital. She grew up in the nearby town of Pezinok. She has described her upbringing as having occurred within an open-minded house, so a tolerant family. She studied law at Comenius University in Bratislava, graduating from its Faculty of Law in 1996. After concluding her education, Ms. Caputova worked in the local government of Pezinok, first as an assistant in the legal department and later as a deputy to the town mayor. She later moved into the non-profit sector, where she handled public administration and the issue of abused and exploited children. Subsequently, she worked as a project manager at the civic association EQ Club on the local community development project. Between 2001 and 2017, she worked with Via Juris, or the Road of Law in Latin, a civic organization, since 2010 as a jurist. In Pezinok, for over 10 years, she was at the forefront of a public campaign against the authorization of another landfill that would aggravate pollution of the soil, air, and water in the city and its surrounding areas. The fight against the landfill culminated in 2013 when the Supreme Court of the Slovak Republic ruled that the new landfill was illegal and violated environmental norms. She ran her own law firm and authored and co-authored several publications. She's a member of the Environmental Law Alliance Worldwide, ELAW, network of environmental lawyers and jurists. In December 2017, she announced that she was joining the emerging political party Progressive Slovakia. And in January 2018, she was elected as a vice chairwoman at the party's first Congress, aiding Mr. Ivan Štefunko's efforts to assure the representation of a credible, socially liberal alternative to Slovakia's conservative political status quo. Progressive Slovakia has not yet won seats in parliamentary elections, but she's now going to become the new president. In a press conference held on March the 29th, 2018, Ms. Caputova officially announced her bid for the presidency. On March the 16th, 2019, she won the first round with over 40% of the vote, defeating then her second place opponent, Mr. Maroš Šefčovič, by over 58% of the vote. Furthermore, as Slovakia had previously also had a female prime minister, Ms. Iveta Radičová, from 2010 to 2012, Čaputova's election as the Slovak president also included it into a small group of parliamentary republics which have had both a female head of state, meaning a female president, and a female head of government, meaning female prime minister. She has repeatedly claimed that justice in Slovakia does not always apply equally to everyone. She has promised, as the new president-elect of Slovakia, to exert as much pressure as possible toward immediate and systemic changes in the Slovak police force, the prosecution office, and the judiciary. She is also convinced that the police force must work as a completely independent institution, separated from politicization, ideological abuse, or corrupt officials, headed by an impartial professional with proven meritorious service. She further claims that it is necessary to transform the prosecutor's office into a publicly managed institution. She views the long-term care services for seniors in Slovakia as problematic and oftentimes neglected. As the president, she would work on making sure that the patients will spend less time in institutional care, opting to instead move them into either domestic care or smaller and more specialized facilities. She sees the wealth in Slovakia mainly in nature, in forests full of life, in clean rivers and underground reservoirs, which are a vital supply of drinking water, in fertile fields that provide people with secure jobs and livelihoods. On the controversial issue of the sexual minorities' rights, she has taken a kind of middle position, saying that she favors legalized civil partnerships for the same-sex couples. And while she does believe that it would be ideal and under normal circumstances, every child should have a father and a mother, she would, as an alternative to the children being placed in institutions, should their parents have died or have been declared unfit to rule, to care for them, or have given them up for adoption or institutional care, and that as an alternative to that, she would approve same-sex parents as long as they loved those children. Ms. Caputova supports maintaining the existing status quo. If there is an extremist regarding abortion, if there is an extreme situation and the dilemma is between deciding whether to adopt a legal norm that will intrude upon the personal lives of citizens or leave it to women's responsibility and their personal choice, I choose the responsibility of a woman. She has been married and has 2 daughters who are now teenagers. She has, however, become divorced and still lives in Pezinok, although probably she will move to Bratislava because of the fact that she will soon become the Slovak president, and the Slovak capital is Bratislava. She practices Zen Buddhist yoga. For her strong and resolute leadership regarding the Pezinok landfill affair, Ms. Caputova was awarded the Goldman Environmental Award in 2016. The text of that prize stated in the words it said that she was awarded for her relentless campaigning against the opening of a landfill in the town of Pezinok, which, if opened, would further aggravate potential health hazards and would contribute to urban pollution.